Hi, well, this is part 5, hopefully the final part, and I just wanted to say thank you so much if you're watching this to have stuck with me for so long. I know it's been a bit of a slog and a lot of watching, probably 30 minutes an episode. That's a lot of time, but trust me, not nearly as long as it took to make. Anyway, I hope you enjoy it. Leave your comments, please subscribe. Well, this is really the final part of the series, I hope, unless I really mess it up again. We are making 4 parts, and this is basically the assembly for all the tapping, the business end of the tapping stand. So here we have what's going to be the tap carrier, which is a 25mm piece of steel, 55mm long, and on one side it's going to be bored out or reamed to 12mm to hold this tap carrier spindle here, and the other end is going to be reamed to 16mm to hold the tap holder. But as we remember from before, I don't have a 16mm collet, so again I've reduced this to 15mm because I'm going to have to do some quite precise drilling, so I want it to be in the collet rather than the 3-jaw chuck. So I've got to remember that this, in fact, I've got to bore out to 15.5, not 16mm. Otherwise it's not going to be tight and accurate. Here, so as I say, we have the spindle. This part of the spindle is going to go into the tap carrier, and then on this end is going to be the feed screw carrier. So the feed screw is going to go through here, screw into this part of the tap carrier, and then when I turn this, because there's going to be a Tommy bar through here, as I turn this, it's going to screw down at the same pitch as the screw. So it's important that the screw you use is going to be the same thread as the tap, which I've made sure is correct. So that's the basic operation. I'm going to start with this tap carrier, I think. It's the bigger operation, and I can then use it, as he suggests, to use the tap carrier as a jig to drill the holes A into the spindle. So once I've drilled the 4 holes for the Tommy bar, I can then use it as a guide to drill into the spindle. Anyway, I hope all that makes sense. Hopefully it'll become more obvious as I start drilling and hacking and making a mess of things. So first thing is I'm going to start drilling and boring this bar. Okay, now I think it's time to switch to the boring bar. So this might be a slightly tricky operation with the camera in the way, but I've also got my piece of 15.5mm, which I'll be able to just gauge when I've got it about right. Alright, always slightly nervous boring, but pretty good. Okay, now it's for the other side and make the 12mm hole. Actually, before I turn it around, I realised I want to just quickly chamfer those edges. I think it'll be nicer. Okay, so I've got the hole to about 11.5, 11.6 mil. I remembered now that I've got a 12mm reamer, which I'm going to try and use here. It's a machine reamer. I'm going to go very slow with it. 12mm bar. Bingo. Oh, it's so nice when that works. All right, good. Okay, the next stage is much trickier because it's going to involve drilling at 0, 180, 45 and the other one. Sorry, I'm tired. And I'm going to try and think of some clever ways of doing that. So bear with me. So I've got to make two marks here. One at 16mm, which is where I'm going to drill the holes for the Tommy bars, and one at I think 6mm, or hang on a sec, 9mm. So one at 16mm, one at 9mm. The 9mm one is where the grub screw, the retaining screw, is going to be placed to hold the spindle. So the first one I'm going to do is at 16mm. 9mm. Okay. But what I am going to do is I'm going to put the dividing plate on my lathe and mark out the 4 quadrants, and I think that's going to be the most accurate way to do it. So bear with me while I get all that sorted out. So I put the dividing head on the lathe, and I know that this graver is absolutely centered. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to score. So I put the light in the wrong place, so I can't do it. Hope you can still see it okay. So I'm going to score the bar I don't know if that's going to come. So I've got the 2 places where I need to cut it. Then I'm going to move it to 90 degrees. Score it again. Another 90 degrees. Another 90 degrees. And if I've got this right, when I go back to the next mark, Yeah, I'm back on my 90 degrees. Okay, so the next thing now is to be able to accurately drill in the center of this rod, and for that what I'm going to do is I'm going to make myself a drilling guide using a small thickness of this 25mm bar. So here's the piece, 12mm board here, 15.5 board here. Now I need to cut, rather drill, these holes. First, there are the two holes that he's described as B, which are M4 tapped, which are going to hold the grub screws to hold the spindle and the tap holder in place. And then crossways there are two holes to be drilled 5.2, which are going to be for the Tommy bars. Now of course that's always a tricky to do, but as you saw I used my dividing plate and I marked the 4 poles on the bar. And the next challenge of course is to drill straight down, and I've stolen a trick of somebody else on YouTube where I have made these little very thick washers out of the same stock as this, so it's exactly the same width, and I've drilled this one 3.2, which is going to the one that's going to allow me to tap M4, and another one I've tapped 5.2 or 5.2 so that I can make the bigger holes. So that's really a drill guide. So what I do with that, and I mean I'm going to use some parallels, is to find the hole or the line. Whoop. Another special Nick moment there. Anyway, you kind of get it, I think, without me making too much of a mess of it. So basically I've got to find the line through that hole, clamp it all together, and then I know that I am perpendicular, and then I can drill the holes through. So let me set all that up and we'll carry on from there. I'm going to start with the smaller holes. I've placed the guide over the crosshairs, so hopefully, and I'm really hoping, that if I drill down I will be going straight over those crosshairs, exactly perpendicular to the center part of the rod. So let's give that a shot. Again, drill going nice and slow. Need to add a bit more light to this. That's for you, not for me. And I'm going to try and drill straight through to the bottom. Oh no, this one doesn't have to be all the way through. What am I talking about? Okay, that's fine. This is only going in that way. Now I also need the same hole on the other side because there's going to be another grub screw for the collet holder. So for the tap holder. So what I'm going to try and do is, without disrupting anything, move that over and be over that line there. So let's hope that should work. now I'm going to drill the 5.2mm holes that are going to accommodate the Tommy bars. So these I do want to go right the way through. So I'm going to do one that way, turn it 90 degrees, and then do the next one all the way through. And hopefully they're going to hit the little marks on the other side. But for this I need to take away the parallel. I hope I've done that tight enough. I guess we'll find out. Let's start again. Okay, I've done the 3.2mm holes, and I'm going to do the 5.2mm hole, which is the one that accommodates the Tommy bars, or one of the Tommy bars. And then I'm going to turn this 90 degrees and then do the other one. And this time I'm drilling all the way through, so I've taken the parallel out. I really hope that I've tightened this vise hard enough, because if it slips now, I'm really going to lose my sense of humour. So let's see. So as you saw, there's something in the setup that's not holding that quite tight enough for me to drill through. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill most of the way through, and then at the last minute I'm going to try and remove the parallel, and hopefully that will work. So I don't grind into the parallel. But let's see. I'm through. Okay, so let's see if that worked. Yeah, look at that. That's pretty good, actually. I'm really pleased with that. Great. So now I'm going to set up at 90 degrees to that. Give me a second to do that, and I'll be back. So as I said, now I've turned it 90 degrees, and I'm having a shot at the other one. I'll be using the same basic technique. Okay, all right, so you saw what happened there, but I think I'm already quite well set up to drill through, so I'll do that off camera, and I think everything's going to be all right, actually. Right, I'm really quite pleased with that, actually, because I hit the target on all 4 holes. You probably won't be able to see this, but I can see them, and it's really great, because so one Tommy bar, another Tommy bar, and then the 2 holes here, which are going to be tapped to N4. So that's great. I'm going to leave this one for now, and I'm going to start working on the next piece. Right, so the next thing I really want to work on is this piece here. One of the interesting things, it tells me to use this piece as a jig to run the 5mm hole through, which is great, because I'm quite confident doing that. It's a really good fit. I'm really pleased with that. I mean, it's as good as I've ever got, I think, probably, actually. And the other operations that have to be made is I need to mill a 6mm notch like that, 2mm deep, and then I have to drill and tap a hole to hold the screw. So like this. again, I said I was making this an M5, I think this is. So I'm going to have to drill this 4mm or something like that, and then tap it. So that's all going to happen in the lathe. And then the notch I'm going to attempt on the mill. So I'm going to make another confession, is that I've always been incredibly bad at chess. And one of the reasons I'm bad at chess, I'm very bad at thinking several steps ahead. I tend to be exactly very much in the moment. And I suddenly realized that actually before I notch that or mill that notch, I should know exactly where I've got the hole placed for the Tommy bar. So I decided to actually mark that and measure that so that I've got some sense of where the knot should be, because if I'm right on the mark, I can follow his plans. If I'm not, look at that. Okay. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark that off, and I'm going to mark the beginning of that 5mm in. Okay. So I'm now going to try and mill across here. I've marked it out. I hope I've clamped this in really well. So let's see if that works, huh? Going quite slow. I'm going to make some very fine cuts. So I want to measure whether that's about 2mm. I'm quite pleased with that. I'm quite pleased with that. It's not 2mm, but it's 1.97, so that'll do. And I suddenly realized that actually what I'm going to have to do is I am going to tap these, because then if I hold that in place, then when I drill there, it's going to be a lot more secure. So the next thing I'm going to do is actually tap these to M4, put the grub screws in, hold it in place, and then I can drill through that piece there. Okay, so I've tapped these through. Okay, that's great. And I can see there, I don't know if you can see there, but the hole is exactly where I wanted it. Let's see if that shows up. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill through that at 5mm, 5.2mm, so the Tommy bar goes through both, and that the grub screw should now hold that in place. Right, so again, that went quite well. I've drilled through. There are two angles for the Tommy bar to go through. That's held in, so if I take that out now, this may be out of focus, I'm sorry if it is. And I'm probably going to have to get this out in the vise. Hang on one second. So there we go, there's the hole through there, the hole through there, the hole through there. That's all pretty square. I'm really pleased with that actually. Grub screw goes through there. You can see the mark where it's gone in. So okay, the next part of this is now going to be to drill and tap this part. Okay, so I've made this part, this part, and this part. I did this off camera because it literally is just tapping and drilling a piece of bar. This bolt is clearly much too long, and I'm going to have to cut that down. That's all I've got at the moment. So now it's on to make the tap holder itself. So this is the piece of 15.5 machined steel that I'm using. First thing is that hole that goes through, so hole B as he describes, is the shank of the tap plus 0.1 of a mil. So I've measured the shank of my taps and they're 5.5 mil. So I'm going to make this, in fact I want to start with 6 mil, 0.5 mil, let's see, actually 6.5, something like that, anyway. And so that's going to go down the middle, and then I've got another pane which is to cut these perpendicular holes to hold the grub screws. On this occasion I'm actually going to use the milling machine and its dividing head, because I have a collet that will fit this and I have a collet that will fit the drill bit. So that's the first one I'm going to do, because I think it's going to be by far more accurate. It's a good thing I double checked, because in fact the tap I measured wasn't the tap I'm planning to use in there full time, and the one I was planning to use actually has a shank of just under 5 mil. So thank God I checked that. So now I put in a 5 mil bit in here, and going to go through the final pass, and let's hope that this works. Let's check. Yeah, it's a really nice fit. Okay, great. Really pleased. That's a really tight fit. Lovely. Okay. So now the next thing to do, I've already marked it out while it was in the lathe, but I'm going to cut the rebate in here. Okay, next operation. So as you can see, I have put the piece in the dividing head for my F75 milling machine. I was very lucky to get this with the mill. These are like hen's teeth now. They're very, very rare. And when they do come up, they're way over my pocket money. In fact, they're probably on the open market cost as much as I paid for this entire machine. Anyway, the beauty of that, of course, is that I'll be able to drill very accurately the 4 holes that I will then tap for the grub screws, and also it's very easy to then eyeball it to make sure that I'm absolutely bang in the middle of the rod. It may not look like it to you because of the angle of the camera, but for as much as you can, trust me that I have got it accurate. And do you know what's really occurred to me is what I could really do with right now actually is a tapping stand. I wonder where I'm going to get one of those. Okay, time to tap. For any of you who don't know, these Eclipse tapping handles, they are absolutely superb. It's so much easier to find the straight edge. They're easy to handle. They make them in different sizes. Sadly, I haven't got a bigger one, so I use them for the M2s and M3s. But they are absolutely wonderful. I'm a huge fan of these. Probably right in the frame doing this, so it's probably a terrible angle. But anyway, you know what tapping looks like. I don't think I need to film much of this. Okay, let's put this all together. Alright, let's see if this thing works. Obviously, eventually I'm going to it absolutely works. I mean, it's difficult because I haven't got this clamped down, but this is absolutely working. I had started it, okay, so I had this is something that I'd already part tapped, so that's why it went in so easily. But I'll tell you what, once this vice is clamped down, this is absolutely working. Hurrah! I did it. I'm overjoyed. It's been a hell of a fight, but I really couldn't be happier. And I'll clean it up a bit, make some clamps for this. But we've got a tapping stand. Of course, I'm going to have to make lots of other collet holders, well, tap holders. Probably M3, M4. M5, M6, M8, and there we have it. And also I'm going to replace that with a proper bolt. We're really chuffed right now, feeling very chuffed.